Well, good morning, Striver. How are you doing? It's a Friday morning, and we're going to have a lot of fun here in the ITAM Kitchen because what are we going to talk about? People, 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 resources. And with that, we're going to go live here in several fronts. I'm going to be here taking notes as we go, and Rob Collins is here actually as a guest, as he's a regular guest here. And being able to say, okay, how can we look at things a little differently? How can we figure out how we can strive? How can we drive? How can we build teams, right? Because here's what we do. Here's where we are. First, we'll introduce ourselves. Then we'll get in the scenario and we'll dig right into it. My name is Bill, Mr. Bill. I'm a recovering IT practitioner. Been asset management about 35 years. I don't know. I can't count. I don't have that many fingers and toes. We'll put it that way, right? And from that, being able to say, now we go live, and we go live at least 3 days a week, and being able to say, how can we help others? How can we help others grow and thrive and be part of a community that actually understands kind of those next steps? And if you're here also online in the chat, who are you from? Say what the biggest thing is you're having with people today. We'll make sure that's incorporated here because everything we're doing is impromptu. We have guidelines, we have use cases, et cetera, that's kind of set up. But the really idea is to be live interactive, not just here, Rob and I talk, which we can do that for days, but being able to say what's your input as well. But before we do that, Rob, why don't you introduce yourself and then we'll kick right in and get right into this.
Absolutely. Hey, I'm Rob Collins. I'm a seasoned IT professional. IT asset management has been a specialty for like 30 plus years between my time serving in the United States Marine Corps through two different government agencies, the state of Florida's Department of Environmental Protection, where I really cut my teeth on IT asset management and operations. It was probably one of the best experiences yet. And then my time at the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. And then I spent some time in the private consulting world trying to cut my teeth on that a little bit. And so here we are today.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, Rob, because what Rob's working on, just a little bit of disclosure, he's actually at a job fair. So he's looking at a job fair asset management. And so he's looking at it even from that perspective. So when it comes to people, he can talk about lots of different stories here. But we also have the experience to talk about the people because here's the scenarios we're working with and what happens, right? We've got 3 different environments. We'll just use those as use cases. Again, if someone has additional pieces you want to add within the chat, please do on YouTube as well as within LinkedIn. Because we have a financial group, we have a healthcare organization, we also have a meat processing plant type organization, right? And what you have for the financial group, our first scenario is, right? And we'll write out the scenarios and we're going to talk to this kind of in general terms, right? They had a team of 6 doing software asset management, spanning over 300 publishers. So pretty good portfolio, right? And 2 of the senior analysts left within the same quarter. Okay, they're down. And now the remaining team isn't aware of anything that those 2 team members were doing, right? The renewal is coming up, and we'll just say there's going to be a hefty fine if they don't get it documented, but it wasn't fully documented the way it was. Otherwise, they could have addressed that in advance. Next one. So, okay, how do you do with people? Next one, Ridgeline Health, right? And Ridgeline, the ITAM function is technically owned by infrastructure manager, who also owns network operations, endpoint support, and vendor relationships, right? And he's also doing ITAM 15% of the time. So when asked to do a comprehensive report by the review board, he says, that's going to take me weeks because I only have a certain amount of time. The reports still contain gaps and required manual correction. How do you deal with this issue, right? The last one, the meat processing, Heartland Provisions. It has ITAM responsibilities distributed through all the different plants within the organization, along with help desk, desk side support, right? Network support, end user training, and they're doing all that, right? They have 5 coordinators, have had no formal training, right? And each is managing their assets differently. And corporate tried to consolidate it, but they received 5 spreadsheets in 5 different formats. How do you move forward, right? So we have an interesting scenario, and I've seen these each. We have probably seen different spins of this as well. But what our core focus here is to say, when it comes to asset management, software asset management, CMDB, and the people aspect, And these are where the stakeholders, as well as our users and our team members, how do we work with this? How do we help better assess and measure the effectiveness of where we are and help them further enhance and grow? So with that, Rob, any initial thoughts that come to mind?
Well, that use of disparate spreadsheets is one, and then it seems as though, especially in this particular community, at least from a business perspective, that you're making it up as they go, right? Mm-hmm. They're just utilizing the tools that they have traditionally to do, I don't know, some best effort, if you put it that way. But, not really a well-concentrated sort of effort around trying to do those kinds of assessments. So first of all, there's industry best practices that are out there. Now you can look these up, you could research them, etc. Probably a better way to go before engaging in something like this. And then second, sit down as a group and with the stakeholders to really kind of determine what it is that you need to measure, especially around people and the performance.
Exactly. Because it's also being able to say, okay, what activities are trying to perform, right? Because we had three different scenarios. We had one, it was a shared resource, one person trying to do it all. That was the healthcare, right? Which is not unusual. It's not unusual at all, right? You have the other environment where you have multiple team members trying to do software asset management, and there was not a shared understanding of what everyone was doing, right? So, okay.
Trying to put out a fire too.
Well, exactly. And the only reason why you found out you didn't know was because of the fire, because of an audit, actually, right?
Yep.
And the last one was shared responsibilities, and no one has an idea where to start. So it's just kind of fumbling and bumbling, right? So you have multiple different things. But what comes to mind when you're trying, and we can pick any of these or we can pick all of these at once, and find either way, is how can we first measure to say, what's our effectiveness and where we are with these team members? And this could be like we have three different environments and three different scenarios. What comes to mind of how we can help measure to help identify where to start with any of these?
I would start by assessing the need, right? And then going from there. We know our three scenarios, right? But what are we really trying to measure here? Are we trying to measure the placement, for instance, of particular team members? I mean, if that's the case, for instance, right, for IT asset management, and you didn't start with a RACI diagram, they'd be best served by starting with a mapping of those processes and some decision around who's assigned and who is responsible and accountable for those services, right? And all of that starts with really well-defined RACI diagrams, okay? And that's responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed, right? Understand those because they describe the relationships that you're going to be measuring. So that is, for me, that's the start point.
No, so let me add to that, right? So I think you're absolutely right. Have the RACI matrix. And for those that don't understand how it works, it's for the process, understand what needs to happen as far as the responsible, accountable, informed, right? And being able to have further clarity on that. But it's also being able to, and Rob, you start out with this as well, is figure out, okay, what are the needs / outcomes that we need for these individuals to perform? And take it with the current state. We'll get to everything else as far as what else they need to do in due time. Well, let's understand how well they're doing what they are doing currently, right? Because when we do that, then it's being able to have further clarity and say, yes, we need you to do more, and we can make it more relatable. And I say that because we want to show them they are being successful versus just slapping somebody on the hand, right? Which usually is what happens, right? Especially today's day and age. Let's understand what they are doing well, let them further clarify why they're doing it, and then we can further understand and say, okay, how can we grow that role? Does that make sense?
Does to me.
Yeah, because what I found is taking that approach actually makes it very complimentary. We talked to this over the last couple of sessions, is you're also involving them in that discussion. So you as a leader, you're going out there and say, okay, what are they doing? What's happening? And having that conversation with them and say, you know what, you're performing these three tasks, and maybe it's software asset management. You're doing 3 different vendors. That's great. Maybe the 2 guys that left, you're doing Microsoft and Oracle. They walked out the door, right? And no one else knows how to do licensing. Well, it's time to ask the rest of the team, we're not getting any new resources at the moment. We're stuck with the 4 people versus 6. We have these 2 audits that come in place. How are we working this through? And that's also important, right? Is being able to say, what can you do, or what can we do from a resource load, say from the software asset management team, what can we do from a resource loading to bring it back? I'm assuming I'm still live. Yes, I'm still live. But that Rob will be back in shortly. Sometimes mobile connectivity is not everything we thought it would be. It happens. As we get, hold on one second.
Okay, now.
Oh, he's back. There he is.
Yeah, there's a connection.
It's all good. It's all good. Hey, I appreciate you coming live and enjoying it. You're relevant where you are, right? You're enjoying the sights of Florida. So I appreciate it. No, that's awesome.
In the wild.
Yeah, exactly. But where I was going with that was like the SAM team, when you start understanding, because they have a software audit they're trying to do, you have down to 4 resources versus 6, and then you had the bigger resources that were doing Microsoft and Oracle. Okay, they went on to another role, another opportunity. Maybe they're working for ServiceNow for all I know. It's not uncommon. At that point, find out what the capabilities of the rest of the team members are to actually take care of a workload. And maybe you still need to bring in that additional resource. Well, it helps you flag that and identify it up front. So you're able to look at that metric and see the true capabilities of the person. That's the first thing that comes to mind for, the financial group, is how are you looking at that? How are you putting that next step? How are you driving that? And being able to say, team, again, how are we coming together? Because when you start putting measurements like that, that's not just a short-term solution, that's a long-term solution for you. It is because when you start measuring and understand true capabilities, then you also understand where each individual needs to grow. And that's extremely important, right? Things we don't think about. We say, oh, we're going to hire resources on the resume. They say they understand this role. You know what? I've seen so many people, and I've talked to many managers on this, that hire in because of the role and the job description. And the reality is, the person can't perform the role. They can't perform it. They have certifications. They say, okay, they know how to use the tool. Well, the tool doesn't give you actual experience. It doesn't allow them to roll up sleeves or really understand the data, understand how it all comes together. That's a problem, right? And being able to further drive that is extremely important. Rob will be back shortly. So you see me. There you go. So when you start looking at the needs and requirements versus outcomes, I started to find some of the gaps. And that's kind of the next step. So that's where I was going also, is because you're going to be outlining this in the background as you go through it and talk to these resources. It's like when you start understanding some of the gaps, you're able to say, okay, what else is there? How can you further enhance their own abilities? And because maybe they need training, maybe they need that capability that they honestly didn't know, or maybe it's good enough. And that's important for you to know, short and long term. Hold on one second. Okay, he disappeared. Sometimes the technology, you have technology all over the place, have to go live. But when you start looking at this, it helps that alignment as a whole. It helps drive team success. And I say this because when you start driving the team success and you look at it from an individual and their individual contributions, that's what makes a team. There's no I in team. I learned that from many different leadership programs. I've been taught by youth at that. It's a whole different story and having fun on that. But when we start figuring out how you're going to drive the team success, when you understand what their individual capabilities are, then the team comes together. Because it's being able to build a team and further influence that. That's important, right? Being able to say, how can you make that happen? And when you start thinking about for that scenario, it's very critical. Because, yeah, you have renewals, a lot of job goes on, they have their day jobs, how are you putting this forward? In that unplanned span, you can work on that. But also being able to say, how can you further drive that? Now, next part, and let me hit a button here.
Button. There we go.
There we go. We're back. So going to the healthcare group, right? The ITAM function is a shared responsibility among when someone has multiple hats, right?
Yeah.
And being able to say, okay, what's the capabilities? Well, to me, Rob, when I hear something like this, because this is somebody that's kind of, it's like, okay, I'm going to add this task to your list, which is not uncommon right now. We've talked about that for the last month, actually, the CMDB, asset management, SAM, put it all in one role. Why not? This is honestly the opportunity to raise your hand.
Oh, yeah.
And ask and have for help, have additional resources, because you can't do it all, right? Especially this is a healthcare organization with multiple different hospitals tied to it. And that, I'll be honest, no. To me, a role, if you have one person that's a shared resource, only 15% on ITAM, I'm going to give you a heads up. And I'll just be blunt with it, right? You're failed. It's doomed for failure. Here's why.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have the team members to actually oversee it. You don't have the team members to look at the data. It's a shared responsibility. It's like, and there's no seriousness about the role. Rob, anything else you want to contribute to that? Because that's just me being blunt and put it out there and make it public on that side. Because to me, that's you need 2 to 3 people minimum to do that, possibly up to 5. And this 5.
Yeah, depending on the size and the effectiveness.
Yeah.
Of it.
Exactly.
You have
exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
No, keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I wasn't able to follow everything that came up in that last segment, but that's a pretty good starting point.
Yeah, and what you're looking for in this one, the healthcare, is they have 5 different hospitals, have multiple different clinics on top of it.
Yeah.
They have a shared resource, and the reality is everyone needs to understand how this all comes together, including your end user support team, your network operations team, and even your vendor management, right? How's it coming together? Because it's a shared responsibility. I'm not saying everyone's going to be updating the database, but we need to work together to figure out that next step. And you need people, I'll say, feet on the ground to make sure it happens.
Yeah.
For example, I know one of the members of the co-op, she has about 20 people that are working for her, and they're all doing break fix. And they also have asset management on them. And she asked me one time, okay, Bill, can you tell them what asset management is? And from that, the dialogue had about 75% of it being interactive. The other 3 are just staring at the wall.
Oh, the question whether or not you've assigned and split the duties up appropriately.
Well, it's not just that, because they all had different locations they're working from.
Yeah.
And what I learned from it and some feedback was, those that are not paying attention, let's understand what was the core reason why they weren't.
Sure.
Don't just slap them on the hand and say, okay, you're gone. I understand, okay, why is your focus not where it needs to be, or provide that further insight what that next step is. Don't coddle them. I'm just using as an example, but have further insight, because again, we don't want them to be expert. I would love for them to be expert. I'll just I'll say that in publicly too. I'd love for them to be an expert and be end user support. That's the world I came up from. So I totally embrace that and endorse that. It's more about don't allow them to walk away without understanding and have their clarity why they think the way they do and why they weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
We just need to understand distractions. We all get distractions, as an example. So with the healthcare, what comes to mind here for Rob, as far as the healthcare and the shared responsibility for asset management? Because this is not uncommon at all. This is very common, and you've seen this even more so probably in the government than I've even seen on the private side.
Yeah, and I've actually seen quite a few of that. I've had a handful of healthcare customers in the ITAM space, right, in the past. And one of the things is the ability, for instance, to coordinate with those different sites, right? So if you can do it, if your administrators, let's say, fund it and properly stand up an ITAM team, right, you're going to have a point of contact for each of the facilities, or you'll have a team that you can send out to, let's say, go do the clinics and go and do the on-site facilities at the larger institutions and hospitals. Right, that's one thing. And there's another thing too, going back to that RACI diagram. It's key to have if you want to start to manage the people and those functions that they're in. It's also something that you should be reviewing once a year versus, let's say, your ticket and your request and fulfillment systems. so that this way you can actually put some statistics behind how much activity a team member, right, is able to pick up for the team, and whether or not you are overtasking that team and it's understaffed and underfunded, or whether you just simply have a lot of downtime and it's mostly watch duty more than anything else. So that's going to be a managerial analysis function that you're definitely going to want to do if you're standing up a program or if you're trying to improve it.
No, that's a great point. You should leverage the data already available to you. That's kind of what you're saying. Sorry, I didn't mean to put my back to everybody. I did a great job of that. My football for the day on Friday morning, not afternoon yet.
Yep.
Is leverage the information available to you. If you're doing tickets and things like that, leverage those metrics, like what Rob was talking about. Leverage the metrics already available to you, and review that with the rest of the team and say, okay, here's where we are. Can you provide more clarity on that? That's a great conversation piece to further dig into it. Got it. Sometimes can't read my check and scratch, so I'll apologize on that. But when you start looking at this, the metrics are what matters. I know that's the whole name of the series here, right? I get it. Okay, that was a nice little fun bill. I wasn't meant for that, but it was more about the measurements of what matters here, because that's where you're going to be showing the leadership, and they're going to ask for clarity questions as well. Okay, well, you need resources. Why can you not get this done? That's going to be one of the first questions. Or why do you need more people? Or why, right? And this provides a substantial say, we have to allocate something here because something has to give. We're growing. Or you're saying reduce the budget. Well, reducing the budget, we need more people. We're not aligning here. You've got to figure out what the happy medium is. Now, are you going to get more resources? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's more shared resources. Maybe it's make it happen. Hospitals usually are pretty stingy with an IT. They're usually the last ones to be thought of, as an example, right? At least what I've seen all the time. I mean, I've seen organizations, really large healthcare organizations, have a one person do an asset management. One person with like 18 hospitals. That's no joke.
Yeah, that's impossible. You're asking for failure. And in fact, if that's all that you're allocating to those kinds of resources, you're going to have happen there what's happened at several hospitals in the last few years. Like one of our hospitals right here in the area, they got hit with a ransomware attack, right? And I'm already knowing that I'm not too satisfied, let's say, with the contracted group that's doing that IT support management, or for that matter, the information security management. But they've improved drastically since then. I actually worked with somebody that was over there when that incident happened a little while ago. Great resource, really good guy. He was head of an operations team, and he was really fantastic at his job. But if the organization isn't going to properly fund an IT asset management team, it's like anything else. Why would you spend any money at all half-assing an effort to support? Whenever you're not pulling in all of your resources and concentrating on the real problem, you're just asking for more trouble, and you spent money finding that trouble.
No, absolutely. And this also provides back to the word I'm going to use, quote, clarity, right? You have clarity on what you're looking at, how that next step is, because it's going to help drive that next step. Because if you come back and say, here's all the metrics, I need manager leadership support for X, Y, and Z, it provides that next step to be a little bit more concise as far as what you're focused on, what that next level of focus needs to be, and making sure leadership is part of that whole decision-making process as well.
Yeah,
it provides that. It's just how it works, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy as it gets.
You know, and there is another thing too. Like, it's often if you need to fund the team, right? If you need to properly put everything together, right? You know, it's one of those things where you're going to need to make a business case anyway. So you might as well begin to collect data on who's doing what within ITAM services that are within your particular organization. And more often than not, just based on my encounters, right, that most organizations are not fully equipped and do not fully fund and approve an actual full ITAM program. Usually it's just a handful of individuals if you're lucky, and they're just basically told, here's some tools, we're going to throw you at them, and then just, oh, please, God, I don't want to be audited or sued. And that's it. That's their business plan. Think about it. Look at the organizations that you've belonged to in the past, those that have been successful, those that have been burned to the ground, right? And what are the differences? What are the distinctions? This is one of those places where I really, really wish that we had a greater dialogue, right, about all of this, right? Because these are the kinds of things that are seldom really talked about. And, I don't know, let's see where we go from there.
Well, exactly, because when you start looking at we're talking about two scenarios now, right? You start saying, okay, what can we leverage from our tickets? What are you going to review? Let it drive the leadership decisions here, your business case, identify some of those risks, and also the capabilities to help, how to help the team. I'll say team succeed, right?
Yeah. And I guess it stands to reason, like if you have a RACI diagram, right, you should be defining what success looks like for each of those particular sets of interactions and work. That's another place where you can then start to scale some metrics around the performance of the people that are in those roles, and or whether or not the role, right, is just overloaded with way too many workloads. Because that's, especially in the ITAM sector, that's a constant, seems like.
Well, it's also about being able to understand what's going through the leadership's mind when this happens, right? Because they're looking
Yeah. If only. Yeah, I want 2 devices to be invented. 1, the mind reading device, and 2, the little box that dogs can bark in. We hear human language, and vice versa.
Exactly. So
work.
Well, and when you're looking at headcount, right, and costs, that's usually what leadership's looking at. But when you get further clarity to say, okay, what other risks is it? Because there's always cost for new resources, totally. But you're saying the risk is significantly higher, or it gets significantly reduced by the resource count increasing. They're going to say, talk to me. You're now speaking my language. If I don't have to spend $10 million on that audit, and because I can save it by hiring a $100,000 person, right?
Yeah.
Per person, it's chump change. I'll be brilliant. I was like, okay, talk to me how to make it work. But you've got my ear. Let's figure this out and talk that through. Right?
That's the beginning of a good, successful pitch.
Yeah, because it's being able to further understand that as a whole, because you've got to compare the two. It's not just saying I want resources. You need to understand, okay, what is the risk if they're staying set as is, status quo, right? Go to that next step. Didn't plan on going there, but that's also part of what we're talking about. How do you deal with this?
Yeah.
How do you measure the team members? Because when you understand the effectiveness here, that goes a long ways. Right?
Yeah.
I'll put it over here compared to this.
I had to drop the coat. I'm in Florida, humidity. And we just had rain finally yesterday. Thank goodness.
Nice.
I'm dropping the coat. Here's a
Matter.
view of the trees for a minute.
It's all good. I appreciate being here. And so, because the other thing you have to look at is when you look at that, you also have to look at not compared to risk, and the risk could be cost of status quo.
I guess the other thing is an afterthought is like the return on investment for these positions and for this responsibility and accountability. How do you can begin to measure some of that?
Well, the other problem we have is burnout and turnover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when you start going down that path, that's an entirely different type of metric that you have to look at, right?
Yeah.
You further driving that. Because when you start going down this path, you have to look at, okay, you might have a resource that has multiple hats on it that's actually doing 3 different jobs. That's great, awesome. But by them doing 3 different jobs, they're not actually allowing the organization to see the true pain that the organization is going through. Therefore, management's not going to help them go to the pain, right? because they're
Yeah.
massive. It's not unusual. Not unusual. So we're going through here and some great dialogue and say, okay, how do we put this here? But there is an additional scenario we have happening, and that's when the meat processing, where the ITAM responsibilities are shared throughout the entire organization, right? And there's in the 5 coordinators, there's no formal training. Didn't get any training at all. How do you work with some of that? How do you measure some of that? So that's not even talking about headcount count yet. This is just talking about capabilities, right? In your status quo. So any thoughts on that, Rob?
And some real life experience on that too, because the way that things were organized at one of the government agencies is everything falls to the cost center, right? And the cost center makes its big division, right, at the division or the office level for a particular state government agency, right? And so you already should be sort of in tune with what's happening, right, through their purchase ordering system, purchase management system. These are kind of old. They're still in the process of being revised, but nonetheless, though, the data is there, right? Now, in my particular case, what I was able to successfully do for the first time was I was able to get it to the point where all of the organizations within this department were talking. They were talking to each other, and they were talking to us at the enterprise asset management level. And all that I asked them for was I simply need to be informed of your purchases. That's all there is to it. I'm not going to make any major decisions on what you choose to buy with the money that you have to spend. That's not my call. But I do need to know what we buy. And I need to know when it's bought. And I need the financial details on that purchase, so that when those items are received, they can fully be accounted for, and cataloged. And on top of that, we can then interface with and begin to put these items in place for the operational part of the life cycle. And this is where the CMDB comes into play, right? Because with those items purchased, properly recorded in the asset management database or data source, right? And then aligned to everything that's in deployment from the CMDB's perspective, you begin to build a much bigger picture around what needs to be managed and in particular how it needs to be managed. And then here is where you begin to sort of like dot the I's, cross the T's, and come up with the numbers to support a business case to be able to fully fund and fully have an active and an effective IT asset management program.
Absolutely, because what you're saying a couple different things. We've talked about this definitely multiple times in the last couple months. Is this helps the alignment of the discussions. It also helps align what you're actually tracking, how you're tracking, what needs to be tracked from an attribute perspective on the data. So we'll get into the data weeds, not too deep here, because it also provides a back to your point, uniformity, and that's one of the problems we're saying in this last scenario is there's multiple spreadsheets tracking it differently. There's different field definitions. How's that happening? The uniformity is going as well. And when you have the stakeholders, you're right, you're doing that individually, but you bring them together in the same room. That's how further alignment is going to happen for this one as well, right? So that people are saying, okay, here it is. Let's pull it in. It's not about technology change, which is how we ended up even going this topic. It's not about saying, okay, what tool can fix this? Maybe there's some things we can look at and go down that path. We're not even that far in the conversation. We're just saying, how can we work? How can the team members, how effective can they be with what they have currently? There's something to be said for that.
Yes.
Because it's also about when you take this approach, what you were just talking about, Rob, it also gives credibility to everyone involved.
Mm-hmm. A lot of times. Management
because you start getting
the team at that level. They won't. They're not looking in that direction. So it's going to be on you if you want to build a better program and do that proper people measurement, put the metrics and the KPIs in place, and interface with the supervisory level, right? That you have to build up to this, and more often than not, this stuff doesn't really exist. And so here's a key place to implement those things.
Exactly. Because what this is also going to do, so let me ask a question, Rob, because it kind of brings up a different point. I didn't think about this until just now, which is great. What's this ability, what's all of this in these scenarios, what's that actually do for the actual IT asset manager or software asset manager, configuration manager, when they're going through these discussions? What's actually happening for them?
Well, there should be some increase of the awareness, right, of the visibility that they're within. You know, they need to see what is being noticed, what is being appreciated, where improvements could be made, right? And so it's this sort of like, how would you say, it's a two-directional view, right? The execs and C-suite, they need to understand what they're getting in their ITAM teams and maybe what they're lacking and need to work towards, right? And then for the individuals who are responsible and accountable for subsets within IT asset management, they need to know the importance of the work that they're doing, right? It's not only going to kind of enhance their ownership of the work, but it's going to also gradually increase the quality of that work that these folks are doing. If they're seen as a valued resource, right, they're going to feel a lot more confident about the work that they're doing and their place in the organization. I think that's a really important aspect of all of this.
It is, because the one word I don't have on here is personal visibility.
Mm-hmm.
I think I got that right. For personal visibility, and that personal visibility can be a couple different forms, right? Personal visibility, you as a leader have insight to how the organization is working. It also provides you visibility within the organization because people know you're paying attention. So that means from an awareness perspective, they know you exist. Rob and I have talked about this multiple different episodes. How can you make yourself more visible? That's also not just visible as far as the person, but also being able to say, how can I work with the analytics? How can I help further communicate? How can I help get my message across? And what else is needed, right? And that's extremely important here too. So your metrics for yourself, we hadn't thought about this, but it's actually a very critical part.
Yeah.
Is how do you work through this? How do you further drive that, right? And how's everything we're talking about, the resourcing, how it's moving, how many more resources we need? It's your own personal growth.
Yeah.
That's typically overlooked because we're always so much in the weeds. We don't have time to think.
Yeah.
When we're actually being part of a co-op or part of a community, higher level community, don't go to the level 100, 200 level stuff. I'm just saying it doesn't get you anywhere on that, at least what I've seen. Maybe you found one that's great. Okay, you'll do it, make it happen. I'm not saying otherwise. But you want to be part of a co-op or community. That's what we talk about inside the co-op all the time, like ITMC. We talk about, okay, what's that next step? Exactly what we're talking about here. How do you look at this? How's it help for the team, but how's it helping you? How are you further growing? Because here's something I heard. I heard this just recently. I was watching I'll say TV, and I do all sorts of different things as far as watching TV. I don't watch the typical TV. I'll put it that way. It's just not the news and things. We'll just say we don't agree. It's the best way to put it. Not into the TV drama.
It's garbage.
Exactly. So, but here's what I found out. What I heard, and it was very relative to everything we're talking about, is because we've talked about multiple different environments. We've talked about burnout, how you're measuring people, et cetera, and how you're having these kind of aligned discussions, which is extremely key, right? The needs, the requirements, the team success, how you're reviewing it, the business case, your own communication, how you can deal with the cost of status quo, burnout and turnover. We've talked about a lot. We're only 40 minutes in this discussion. So we've had a lot of topics, right? All the way to the personal visibility. But you know what's important? There's an underlying part to all of this. All of it. It's one word. It's one word. Rob, any idea what that word is?
No. No. 100 words come to mind, but no, that's rather cut to the chase.
It's growth.
Growth.
It's growth.
Yeah.
You're talking about growth. That's all this is. I'm going to simplify it to one word. There's other adjectives and things we can add to it, and other nouns we can add to that too, but this is about growth. How are you looking to find ways to help you grow with your knowledge, grow your ability, grow your capabilities, grow other people's capabilities, that next step? And here's what I found out, again, back to that video I was watching the other night. It was a relative to a different topic, but it totally hit home. Like for right now, it's just like, okay, let's think of this. When And Rob, I'll ask you the question. With growth, when you know you're growing, are you more adept to do more in your job or less?
I guess it depends on the nature of the growth.
Well, typically more, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you know you're going to grow and that the growth is an outcome and you see that, right? You're typically going to say, you know what, I need to do a little extra, but it's okay. It's helping me grow and thrive because I know I need this. It helps my own internal skills. I'm not staying just with the box, right? Most people, it doesn't matter what type of relationship it is. It can be a work relationship, it can be a personal relationship, et cetera. Because if you don't have growth, what's the opposite?
You have atrophy and death.
You're dying. Yes. Okay. That's too funny. My point is, sorry about the interruption there. On the growth is when you feel like you're growing in growth, people are going to support you more. Yeah. They see themselves expanding, right? They see that forward momentum. Let me go that way. Forward momentum. I'm trying to get used to a camera going backwards. Sorry about that. The forward momentum, because when you see forward momentum, then it's like, oh my gosh, I see where this is going. Let's see what else I can do. Mm-hmm. Now, some people don't like the, okay, what else can I do? I totally get it. If you're one of those people, I don't disrespect you. You know what you know, and that's fine. I'm not saying otherwise. But for most individuals out there trying to grow and trying to expand and go that next step, not even a corporate ladder, it's not even about the corporate grind, right? But they see themselves grow and thrive. It's like, you know what? This is nice. This is relative to what I really enjoy. It helps me a lot, right? And being able to expand upon that is huge in helping you personally grow as well as the entire team. That's all we're talking about when we're talking about all these metrics and that step. Because, Rob, I'll ask the question. We started out the entire topic saying, how do you have the right people? That's the whole topic of the session, right? And we said, and that has some interesting connotations when you say something like that, right? I think you would agree. Yeah. But you say do you have the right people, or do you have the right people to grow? It's a little bit different perspective, isn't it?
Well, I would certainly hope that it's the right people to grow, especially from where I see most ITAM programs. Because they're really developing from remnants, or they're developing from pieces, into something, that you can trust, and that you can help to guide you moving forward with the business is always kind of the first priority. Thus, to talk about those alignment exercises, and then putting the mechanisms and the people in place to ensure that those are met. So there, the growth would be limited, right, to being satisfactory for achieving business outcomes. And beyond that, and in the spirit of continuous improvement, of course, you do want to go beyond that, right? And that might be considered growth. You have to go beyond what's required, and what's expected. So there's those things to think about as well.
Absolutely. And let me spin it up a little bit differently. And maybe I'll put the wrong word. Maybe how to grow with people. Maybe that's how we should talk about it, right? Yeah. Because that helps you identify, okay, how's it working? How's it not working? How's that next step? Yeah. And it's not about just the individuals and their performance, but you're saying the entire part of the process. Yeah. Right? It's that simple change of words and flip those around a little bit. Mm-hmm. Instead of how to measure people for growth, it's how to grow with people. Totally different discussion. Totally different, right? And sky's kind of the limit on this. Well, it's not focused on what we need. Yes, it is. We're in the people business. And that's the important part of asset management. Without the people, whether it's talking about stakeholders, team members, et cetera, we don't exist. And that's important here, right? How do we drive that and say, okay, how can we move that forward? Because the cost, the programs, institutional knowledge, and walking out the door, that's what you're going to try to avoid. And that's the people aspect. Now, So Rob, let me ask, with all the training you've had, now you had also military training, so excluding that.
Sure.
A different type of training, right? Were you actually, did you learn anything? Were you taught anything in your certifications for the industry, how to deal with people?
Not a lot in the certifications. Yeah, especially like the ITAM specific certifications. It was really more about the processes and the tools. And then, of course, there are people elements to that, because you have to know who you're going to put in what positions you need to have in place to cover the various work activities. But beyond that, no, the whole people thing is something well outside of all of this. While it's a part of everything that you do, typically the people-related training all comes from other sources, other certifications, other things, other degrees. That and life experience. I mean, if you've been burnt or if you've been elated, that's life experience. It tells you how to treat other people.
Exactly. It's usually a school of hard knocks. I lost to say it's hard knocks. And when you realize the people aspect, how important it is to understand this and to measure that, that'll help you for the rest of your career and your life, right? And that's where I was getting to, is the people aspect, because I think it was I've learned that about 3 years ago. So in asset management, 30 years, going on all different experience. That's great. And it's like, okay, we're looking at the wrong thing. Without the people, where's ITAM? Where's software asset management? Where's even configuration management? And because if we're not communicating, we don't know who can help us, don't know how to measure, don't know how to look at the metrics to help deem if our efforts are worthwhile or not. There we go. Where are we?
I don't know. It feels like an effort to remove people from the equation entirely in some efforts.
Well, they are, but it's not about having AI replace people in this case. That's not what this is about.
No, not what we're talking about.
Yeah, the people aspect has to remain. It does not go away. You might be able to automate some things, help trigger and say, okay, here's something else you need to pay attention to, and have some dashboards. That's awesome, right? But the people aspect never goes away. And that's the most important part I want us to reemphasize here with whoever's watching, or even a little replay, is AI is helping in so many ways, but the people aspect never changes. It might evolve, but we still need to make sure that's in play.
Yep. It's true.
And I think
the messiest aspect of it all will be the people, and that's the thing. Yeah, you have to deal with that if you want it to be effective, and fair. Then you have to be involved with the people.
Yeah, because when you start thinking about this, you think about, okay, what's the duration of time, and people are going to delay, and they're going to have their own opinions or attitudes, whatever you want to put that place out there, right? But it's okay. But being able to figure out, okay, not being pulled in by their drama. Being able to say, how can I objectively do my job, perform as well as I can, and even work with some of these tasks at hand? That's important. It's very important. So as we're wrapping up here, Rob, we're looking at how we're measuring people. We've talked about 3 different scenarios. Anything else that comes to mind as we come in the last 9 or 10 minutes of what we have here?
I wish that there was more that really, but I don't think so. It's just being focused on getting the teams assembled. First of all, getting the team construction, if you will, analyzed, right? And using that RACI as a template then for who to put into place and the job functions that they're going to be responsible and accountable for, and how all of those people were going to be speaking to each other, that interplay of dialogue, if you will, around IT asset management, and then just other things that come to play. Of course, we talked about what different stakeholders are going to ask, let's say, of an IT asset management system, and having those meetings. I think that's crucial to sort of setting up the template and the expectations. And then just on a very minimum, it should be done on an annual review basis to see that what you've put in place is functioning or not, or needs to be modified in order to be successful and to go forward and to grow, as you say.
Absolutely. I'm writing down a couple of the notes here for us as well. You can read my scribble. There's some additional parts behind this too, right? Because when you start talking about measurements, you're looking for, we always talk about effectiveness, right? We talk about some of the handoffs, you look at the process, those handoffs. We talked about alignment, talking about how we were working on the other side of the screen here. Sometimes completion of tasks, whatever those tasks are, right? Clarity of the role. Okay, what is the role the right fit for this person, or do we need to adjust it, right? Which goes down the next one is clarity of what skills are needed, right? Because maybe the skills of that person don't fit the role and you need to modify them one way or another. Or maybe there's additional enhancement skills you need for that person. Think about that, right? And those skills could be talked about licensing, it talked about how you're looking, okay, maybe you need a deal with new technology, maybe it's tracking, okay, how to understand how to track devices and how to capture it. It could be just that simple, right? But when I say this, it's also about, I'm going to say communication.
Yeah.
Right. Easy for me to write backwards. There you go. Not. But anyways, it looks easier on screen than what I just did. It's also about being able to communicate, right? And the communication for you as a leader as well as the entire team, right? That's important. And each one of these skills are important for everybody. And that's the important part when we talk about measurements. What areas you want to focus on? Start here. And yeah, you can go technical, fine. If you don't want to technical. But I'll be honest with technical. Oh, I just got with my screen. But anyways, I don't know about you with technical, but technical screens and technical, as far as technology, teach me how to use technology, that can be.
Oh, yeah.
That can be, that's very trainable, right? Mm-hmm. But when you understand,
train on the job.
Oh, all the time. But we start thinking about, okay, how you doing with the process? How you doing that part of it? You can teach these to people. The rest of these are more almost like personal skills. It's like, well, that's not in the job description. I get it. There's a core of your problem. You forget about the people within the role, right?
Yeah.
Yep. It's more than dealing with an Excel spreadsheet. Much more.
Way more.
What do you need? Yeah, because that's typically what I'm seeing, Rob, and maybe you've seen it differently. Is I see all these job descriptions. Like, well, you need for proficient with Microsoft Access or database or databases or ServiceNow or Flexera or Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint, efficiency. But they don't
job
talk about
descriptions
this.
typically are going to be written between the supervisory staff and HR, and they often overstate what's really needed to get a job done, which is why oftentimes, when they do hire and they get people in, they are not setting the proper and the correct level of expectations. And the other thing too about that is that you'd be surprised that the type of people that do a really good job at this aren't necessarily the ones that pass through all of the filtering and the pre-selection processes. I'm right now trying to get word with some folks around IT asset management work, and the rejection of the application was right away. And it's like, well, what was it about this, right, that didn't get through AI filtering? And did a human actually look at this? And let's see if there's a way to appeal and consider. That's all a team building activity where somebody that really fits that role doesn't get there. And if that's the case, think of it in your organization, how many really well qualified people for that job have been passed up and shoved off to the side. And then what you end up with is that really what you wanted to put into this position? Or are you getting somebody that passed through these sort of filters and criteria but isn't well suited to the work? Then what do you do with the next year or two? You make up by throwing additional training and maybe tossing people into a shark pool full of tools and expecting them to come out at the other end and give you what you're asking for. I don't think it's a good way to do business. But it's the day-to-day now.
Well, it's become the day-to-day only because people are being lazy. And they look at efficiency and they want the textual output to help explain what the verbal conversation is going to entail.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Right. You think about that, right? But that's honestly where you look at where AI has taken, say, the whole HR process and hiring, and you're doing evaluation. I mean, I've been rejected as much as anybody. It's like, fine, okay, this is humans. I laugh at it. It's like, why do you laugh? It's like, it's a real problem. It is a problem. But for me, if I try, and I've tried it in very large organizations to say, guys, you have a problem, they didn't care.
Hmm. Yep, kind of takes you back.
The inside trying to hire me. Yeah, it's like nobody on the front line cared.
Yeah, it takes you back to the 70s and 80s, man. The Police song, Rehumanize Yourself. I think it's on Zenyatta Mandata.
I like it.
There's an earworm for you. That'll be stuck in your head through next week.
I love it. That's perfect. That's perfect. Anyways, I want to kind of wrap up with that, because when you look at these aspects behind the roles, on top of everything we've talked about, these aspects, then you have a well-developed machine. And I'm not saying just a machine, a well-developed machine that's a team.
Yeah.
Right? And you talk about alignment, how that happens. This is for stakeholders. This can be your immediate team for SAM team. It can talk about how you're working amongst your peers. This right here, how are you doing that? That's extremely critical. And that's the part I want us to wrap up today, is when we talk about measuring people, think about not just what's in the job description. That's one thing. Truthfully, that's boring, because the machine can do it. I'll be brutally honest. Yeah. The machine can do it. Talk about the aspects the machine can't do. Mm-hmm. Now you're talking about reality. So I just want to leave that final note, kind of being pretty harsh on purpose. I'm just being direct when I say harsh.
Oh, yes.
This is the part that no one talks about.
No.
Right? And you've got to figure out, when you deal with this, you deal with the person, now you're going to make headway. So I know, well, at least for me, I can speak to me, Rob, and I think same is true. I know I'm human, so I make mistakes. How about you?
Oh, absolutely. Heck, it's because of the mistakes that I've been able to learn and adapt and improve.
Exactly.
And
That's what makes it fun.
For it. You do an after-action brief, lessons learned, and then everything there goes into the continuous improvement chain.
Well, I'll leave us on this note too. It's a great point for helping us on the wrap up. Some of my biggest failures, as far as helping complete a task, also helped drive some of my biggest successes in my entire career.
Yeah.
Think about that. I'll leave you on that note. Thanks everyone for being here. It's been a phenomenal time again, Rob. Appreciate you being here. Going live here in Florida. And I appreciate everyone here, even if it was on the replays. Great, make it happen. It's another great session. Measure the metric. How measurements do matter. Be able to put that stuff. Right? They're calling now. What can we say? So appreciate it. Everyone have yourself a great rest of the week, and we'll talk to you on Monday. See you then, everyone. Thank you.
Bye for now.